you intend to convey?
I think something like this.
Oh, yeah. Let me double check it.
It's like something like a mucus in the nose, like blockages.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. I'm having it now. Yeah, because of the changes in the weather condition. So I'm a little bit under the weather.
Okay. I I I I I did had it during my first time in Vietnam. So when
Yeah.
when I sensed it coming from you, I did understand you are now having it.
Yeah. Yeah, good guess. Okay. So we might need to start now because we are 5 minutes late already. We are coming to the final two modules in the course altogether. And in the module number 9, we are going to focus on test validation. So in this way, we have to prove that the design test is useful, valid, and reliable for its target purposes. Okay, and in the lesson today, I am going to introduce a new way to test validation. Okay, so actually it's not very novel because it's based on something that you have learned in academic writing. And I do hope that if you have been involved in the academic writing courses, you have familiarized yourself with this concept over here, toward mean argument model. And you might have learned about the claim, ground, warrant, backing, qualifier, and rebuttal. And this one is going to be the basis for the argument-based approach to test validation. And I will spend more time introducing the model proposed by Kill about validity argument with the two main components. The first one is interpretive argument, and the second one is validity argument. And finally, I would like to introduce some kind of changes to the original version proposed by Kane because his original version has some kind of shortcomings. And from that, we have some kind of modified version proposed by Chappell and his colleagues. Okay, so before I start the lesson today, I'd like you to come back to what you have learned in academic writing course. Have you ever learned about the twelve-mean argument model? Ladies and gentlemen.
I think that we haven't.
Yeah, you haven't. Okay. Yeah, so have you ever heard about some kind of concepts like claim, warrant, row, backing, quantifier, and rebuttal? This one is quite familiar to you when you learn about the argumentative essay.
Yes.
Okay. So Quang Dũng, can you please tell me what does this mean for claim, warrant, row, backing, quantifier, and rebuttal?
I think claim is when we assert our opinion on something.
Very good.
And we use backup on ground to support that claim. And rebuttal
Very
is
good.
And rebuttal is when we do not agree with something and we provide evidence for our disagreement.
Yeah, might be. And to be more precise, what you have learned is about counter argument. Yeah, rebuttal is that you put yourself in the shoe of your opponents and try to look from their view. But after that, we need to refute their view as well. And what about the backing and quantifier?
Yeah, I think backing is I think it's the same as row. We research some other authors that have the same opinion as us to support our claim.
Might be what? So actually, it might be some kind of indirect evidence. Yeah, it's quite different from what you have. So row and backing have the same function. They are used in order to justify the thesis or the main ideas that you have. And quantifier, so final components over here.
Maybe the numbers, like concrete evidence, like proof.
Maybe. Okay, so quantifiers can be some kind of hedging because it can lower the certainty to a statement, because at the beginning you talk about the claim is a statement of your opinion, and sometimes the statement is not so strong, so we need to have some kind of hedging devices in order to make it a little bit lower in terms of certainty. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is that you are going to watch the following video and try to compare what you have in mind now about the big concepts over here, claim, warrant, row, backing, and quantifier together with rebuttal. And from that, can you please note down the key concept of this kind of notion in terms over here?
The Toulmin method is a tool for analyzing and crafting arguments developed by the philosopher Stephen Toulmin. To help you see all the benefits of this method, here's the Toulmin tool man to show you how it works. Each of the tools on his tool belt is essential for developing a strong argument: claim, grounds, warrant, backing, qualifier, and rebuttal. Let's start with the primary tool, the claim. This is the assertion or thesis that the writer proposes, serving as the main expression of the argument. An example of a claim would be, dogs are the greatest pets. While the justification is not yet included, you can clearly see the writer's viewpoint that will direct the argument. To grant this argument some validity, the Toolman toolman will use his next tool, the grounds, which serve as the argument's foundation, justifying the main viewpoint of the argument. For example, a great pet is intelligent, obedient, and loving. This statement establishes the qualities that would describe a great pet. However, it is not yet directly connected to the claim concerning dogs. This is where the warrant comes in. This tool serves as the connective tissue between the claim and the grounds, whether stated directly or simply implied. For example, to link back to the claim of dogs as the greatest pets, we can add, dogs are perceptive, easily trained, and one of the most affectionate animals towards humans. Now we have linked our claim about dogs to the grounds on what makes a great pet. Any additional evidence used to support the claim is considered the backing. For example, these traits are why dogs are the most widely used service animals. While this statement may not be enough justification on its own, it serves well in conjunction with the warrant and grounds. Few claims are true in all circumstances. A qualifier allows for special cases and helps establish the author as reasonable and credible. In this argument, the grounds can be edited with a qualifier to allow for cases in which some dogs don't match the criteria of the greatest pet as stated in the claim. Dogs are typically perceptive, easily trained, etc. The qualifier typically adds credibility to the argument as it acknowledges special cases contrary to the argument's claim. Lastly, it serves well to acknowledge another side of the argument to establish the writer as unbiased and open-minded. An acknowledgement in the form of a rebuttal persuades readers who disagree with the claim to follow suit and accept an unbiased perspective. Here, the writer can bolster their claim of dogs as the greatest pets and acknowledge the competition. For example, while some may argue cats can also be affectionate and obedient, they are still more difficult to train than dogs. Now we have acknowledged that dogs are not the only animals that can be good pets without contradicting our earlier claim that dogs are the greatest pets. As you can see, we have now constructed a strong, unbiased, and complete argument that would make even the most adamant.
Okay, so that is going to be the key content of the video. And can you please tell me what is going to be the underlying insights of those concepts over here? Because this kind of real concept is going to be very important for our lesson today. Let's start with the first one. Yeah. What does this mean for claim? Is it the same as we discussed in the previous section? Okay, and it surprises me because you haven't familiarized yourself with this kind of concepts over here, because I do believe that you have learned about the academic writing, especially for the case of argumentative essay, and two-minute argument is gonna be supposed to be the most key component in academic writing. Henry, do you want to say something?
Yes, you asked a question, what claim might mean.
Yeah.
From the video, I just realized that claim can serve as an assertion or a thesis, or a kind of a proponent idea you want to talk about, something like that.
Okay, very good. So here is going to be your opinion, the main idea of your writing, the main idea of your speaking. It's going to be the statement of your true opinion. And what about grounds? Yeah.
I think it's more of a foundational idea for the argument, to be something you use, different ideas you should build your claim with.
Okay, very good. So they are actually evidence that we can use in order to justify the claim and to verify the plausibility of the claim. Okay, and now we have other kind of backing over here, because backing has some kind of very close relationship with the grounds. Yeah. So what does this mean for backing?
I think it's more of an additional evidence and plausible arguments to back the claim.
Very good. Very good. So we have some kind of additional and indirect evidence. Ground is going to be something that we do need to have in order to justify the claim. So backing is going to be some kind of additional information in order to make your ground stronger. Okay. And what about the warrant and qualifier? Something stand in between claim and grounds. Tạ Ngọc Anh.
Yes, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that warrants and the qualifier are like examples. Here the writer explained that how perceptive are dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So it is also like a.
Okay.
So
yes.
I think that this sentence is like a connection sentence for the grounds and the backing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So actually, warrant is going to be the connecting sentences between
yes.
the claim and the ground, because in order to make the conclusion that dogs are the greatest pets, we base on the ground that a great pet is normally intelligent, obedient, and loving. And actually, there's some kind of broken link between the two sentences over here, and warrant is going to be brings this kind of link back, because here we need to describe the key features of dog. Okay, so we have to ensure that dogs must be intelligent, dogs must be obedient, and dogs must be loving in order to connect this kind of evidence back to the claim. Okay, and quantifier is going to be the way that we can acknowledge some kind of exceptional cases. And that is the reason why we can say that not every single dog has this kind of qualities over here. And that's why we have some kind of words like typically, often, or usually. So that is a way that we try to down-tone the certainty of the claim. Yeah, so that is going to be something that we should have here. So by and large, warrant is going to be some kind of underlining assumption that we need to have in order to connect the ground back to the claim. Sometimes we do need to have some kind of warrant, and sometimes it can be stated implicitly. Okay, and rebuttal, what is this? Okay, Đỗ Thảo. Thảo Đỗ, are you there? Hello. So you might not be there. What about Lê Thu Hương?
Yes.
Yeah. So what does this mean, rebuttal, and why do we need here?
I think rebuttal is some counter argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does this mean for counter argument, by the way?
Some opposite idea, some opposite argument against the claim. I think so.
Yeah, okay. So we try to look from the view and perspective of our opponent. For example, here, why some may argue that cats can be affectionate, obedient, but blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so that is going to be something that we should have over here in order to make our claim stronger. So in order to do so, one very useful way is that we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the opponent and try to look at the same issue from their angle. So in this way, we can understand their view, and at the same time, we can counter argue their view. By doing so, we can show that we are very objective. We are not biased, because we look at the same issue from more than one angle, from more than one perspective. Okay, so here is going to be very useful writing techniques that we should have. And why I would like to introduce this kind of argument method over here, because it's going to be the underlying principle for text validation today. And before I can tune in and unpack how this kind of argument model is incorporated into the text validation, I would like you to bring this kind of concept back to our story. And here is going to be one claim.
The Toulmin method is a tool for
Yeah, so here is going to be one claim I have for IELTS band score. This kind of claim is widely used in almost every single cases, especially for academic tests. And for any test taker with overall IELTS band score of 6.5 and above, and he or she has nothing below 6, is able to use English as a means of communication in academic context. And that is the reason why the above score is normally used as the second language proficiency benchmark for any English non-native speaker to enroll in a college or some kind of university in English-speaking countries. And here is going to be the claim. Now, I would like you to work together with your partners in groups, and you have to generate the relevant grounds, warrants, qualifiers, backing, and rebuttals. Of course, when you try to generate it, it doesn't have to be correct all the time. Just try to give it a go to see how you understand the insight of the above concepts. Okay, so I will give you some time to look at the claim once again. And after that, I will send you to breakout rooms. And in these rooms, you are going to discuss with your partners in order to identify some kind of relevant grounds, warrants, qualifiers, backings, and rebuttals for this claim. And I'm pretty sure that you have already familiarized yourself with this kind of claim already. Yeah, so if you have some kind of intention to move to another country to study, for example, for MA, for PhD courses, this is gonna be one of the core requirements that you may have. Okay, so now I would like you to go to your groups. We are going to have about 4 big groups on together.
Vừa mới ấy xong rồi hả?
Mấy hôm trước ấy.
Mấy hôm trước ấy.
Chưa để ý rồi.
Mà học hôm nay là buổi cuối cùng rồi, thế là 2 tuần nữa để nộp lại. Thế là sau tuần đề hà một cái là mọi người đã xong bài đề hà chưa?
Chưa biết.
Đang làm dở đây.
Em xong từ đầu tuần em chả chữa nữa, em chả sửa nữa.
Mày siêu thế.
Thì em chỉ từ đâu làm đến đấy thôi. Chứ
thì tại tức là em hết một module làm luôn này, chị xong rồi chị mới làm.
Có mấy bài em viết có mỗi một trang kệ.
Thôi mình chém thêm một trang nữa đi cho an toàn.
Không, nếu như vậy thì để cách hai double space nó còn ấy hơn.
Chị đang để 1,5, lúc đầu để double xong rồi cuối cùng nó dài hơn 2 trang.
Có quan trọng số từ ở đâu, quan trọng là nội dung mình viết cái gì.
Rồi, thấy các khóa khác bảo là có những người chỉ viết 1 trang rưỡi ấy, cũng chả sao đâu. Nội dung thôi. Tôi rồi quay lại vấn đề.
Vấn đề này hơi
khó hiểu thật. Ground trong cái doc kia thì nó đang là nó giải thích là thế nào là grade pad đúng không? Thế thì hay là ground của mình sẽ là giải thích thế nào là benchmark.
Đúng rồi.
For L2 proficiency.
Em nghĩ giải thích mấy cái cụm như là threshold với bandmatch ấy.
Ý chắc ground như kiểu là cái argument lớn nhất của mình để chứng minh là chỉ cần 6.5 là đủ ạ. Đúng không?
Yeah, you are right. So you need some kind of evidence to justify that 6.5 is enough for the people to study in another country. Okay, so what kind of evidence that we need to have?
Evidence.
Maybe so, they need that kind of benchmark to be able to communicate when they go overseas. Like maybe
okay, yes.
Actual
Yeah, so why 6.5? Why not 5.0? Why not 7?
I think we will have to refer back to the
CFR.
I mean, maybe just the
or some kind of marking rubric or some kind of
the marking rubric for writing for IELTS.
Very good.
How do they define users of 6.5? What can they do?
Yeah. What does this mean for 6.5? And if the students obtain 6.5, what they can do and what they cannot do. Okay, so that is the first one. That is one kind of evidence that we need to have here in order to justify whether 6.5 is going to be a plausible benchmark. Okay, apart from this kind of evidence, what other kind of evidence that we should have? Yeah. So the first one, we need to go back to the description of the levels of IELTS band score. And after that, we need to have other kind of evidence as well, like yeah. So how can we ensure that 6.5 is adequate enough for a English non-native speaker to communicate very well in academic setting in a English-speaking country?
No idea.
Okay, so just like say that you conduct a research, you have a research question that is, a 6.5 is enough for non-native speakers of English to communicate well in academic setting. So if you want to collect the evidence to answer this question, what kind of evidence that you are going to seek for?
Maybe we can look at the requirement of the school.
Yeah, so how can so how can you look at the requirements of the school?
Difficult.
Okay, so you can interview, for example, the school managers, the school lecturers, what are the requirements for land use, right? Or at the same time, you can go and try to ask a student who are at the university now and what kind of language performance they need to perform. Yes, so that is something that we need to have in order to justify that 6.5 is gonna be enough. Okay, so on one hand, we need to go back to the description of the band score of IELTS. It's supposed to be some kind of theoretical evidence. And if you go directly to the university and interview the managers, interview the student, interview the lecturers about the required language performance there, so it's going to be some kind of actual or some kind of real life or empirical evidence. So that is a way that we try to collect the evidence to justify the claim above. Okay, yeah. So yeah. So keep on going with that. Keep on going with your discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we
Rồi mình đang nói cái gì?
mình có hai round đúng không ạ?
Đúng rồi. Theo thầy nói thì có một cái là dựa trên lý thuyết, đúng rồi. Round đầu tiên dựa trên lý thuyết thôi là IELTS band score, đúng không? Giải thích 6.5 nó làm được cái gì, không làm được những cái gì. Và thứ hai là về mặt thực tế thì mình sẽ phải đi xem các trường nó yêu cầu như thế nào, đúng không? Nhưng cái đấy, cái thứ hai chị không hiểu. Cái đấy là khi mình làm research thôi, đúng không?
Em đang, nếu mà theo em hiểu ý này là có nghĩa là giống như cái câu này của mình nó có hai vế, một vế là 6.5 nó là điểm có thể giúp học sinh có thể communicate được này, đấy là một ý nhá, thì cái ý nữa sẽ được giải quyết bằng cái marking rubric mà vừa chị bảo nhá. Mình cũng nhìn vào ví dụ nhìn một cái speaking band descriptor chẳng hạn, thì mình sẽ lấy một cái bullet point ra nhá để mình nói nhá. Cái ý thứ hai là cái phần còn lại ấy, có nghĩa là cái điểm đấy nó được sử dụng để làm cái threshold để làm
vào mấy trường kia.
để vào các cái trường thì cái đấy mình sẽ phải lấy ví dụ của một vài trường cụ thể ra, hoặc là mình lấy ví dụ của những cái trường hoặc
có thể
nó một câu gì đó liên quan đến một trường nào đó. Dạ vâng, thì em đang nghĩ là có nghĩa mình lấy hẳn cái evidence của một cụm trường hoặc là một trường nào đó ra,
nhưng mà khó nhờ
biết là ở đây em không biết academic chứ không phải là kiểu IELTS xuống thì mình hoàn toàn có thể search mà.
Đúng rồi, thì ý là đang nói chung bất cứ cái nước nào ấy. Rồi khó thế.
Mình có thể lấy luôn cái vừa thầy bảo là để mà học tiến sĩ, học thạc sĩ gì ấy thì phải dùng ở ngưỡng điểm là 6.5 chẳng hạn, đúng không? Để đi nước ngoài.
Chẳng biết lấy mấy cái đấy đâu. Nói chung chung à?
Đấy em đang mỗi phân vân cái là cái đấy nói chung chung hay nói cụ thể hẳn một trường hay như nào không hiểu lắm. Thôi mình cứ bắt đầu đã, để tính rồi.
Cái Warren với qualifier của cái IELTS span score thì như nào?
Cái gì?
Tức là cái ý thứ hai ấy, mình xong round rồi đúng không?
Vâng.
Giờ đến cái Warren với cả qualifier của cái đấy thì mình biết cái gì?
Warren. Warren giờ đây phải link lại đúng không? Warren.
Lại là
link lại cái background.
Đúng rồi, Warren là kiểu giải thích support background, xong backing là lại gì giải thích support tiếp. Nói chung khó hiểu. Xem có tìm được cái benchmark IELTS chung không? Kiểu cho overall chứ không phải là cho từng kỹ năng đâu.
Overall là gì có gì?
Chị nhớ là có. Chị nhớ là có đấy. Sơ chị nhớ hồi chị ôn này trong cái quyển Cambridge ấy.
Đúng cái
trang đầu tiên ấy nó ghi hẳn luôn là
cái bảo
very good user rồi là nó có đấy. Thử Google ra xem có. Máy chị đâu quá.
Đây thấy rồi. Gửi cho mọi người đâu nhỉ? Chat box gửi có được nhỉ? Chết rồi.
Đây, 6.5 đang là competent user đúng không? Phải không?
Em vừa gửi chat box ấy, không có nhìn thấy không?
Chị sợ chat box nó nhảy sang cả lớp không?
Dạ.
Không cả lớp được, chỉ trong nhóm ấy thôi.
Okay, so welcome back. I do hope that you have already got some kind of very fruitful and engaging discussion, upon this kind of topic over here. And we have the claim about the benchmark of 6.5 for English non-native speaker in order to enroll at a university or college in some kind of English-speaking countries. And what might be the relevant grounds that we need to have here? Okay, I would like to start with the group number 1. In the group number 1, I have Hải Hà, Thảo Phương, Thu Thảo, Hải Yến, Đỗ Thảo, and Hạnh. Okay. So can you please tell me what kind of direct evidence that we need to have in order to justify the plausibility of this benchmark? Hoàng Hải, yeah.
Yes, I think that's for the test taker with the overall IELTS band score for academic test of 6.5 or above. From 6.5, they are considered as a component, the competence user.
How do you know about it?
It's based on the band descriptor for writings and speaking. Because from 6.5 or 6, they the test taker, they have to address all of the task requirement.
Very good. Is that some kind of very good evidence to bring here? So we talk about the meaning of a particular band score. What does this mean when I have 6.5? What I can do and what I cannot do in terms of linguistic competence. You are right. And that is the first kind of evidence that we need to have. Yeah. What else? Yeah. What are the kind of evidence that we need to have?
You mean for the ground?
They are all about the grounds. Yeah, evidence mean other kind of grounds. Yeah. Okay, so apart from the description of the band scores, what else should we need to have here in order to justify this claim?
Can I share my opinion?
Yeah.
From group 3, I in my group we discussed about the validity and the authenticity of the test. Because the test is from some, it is created by some well-known university in the world. For example, it's from Cambridge. So, and in addition, it can assess the learner competence comprehensively, because it can accept the listening skill, reading skill, writing skill, and speaking skill, and for each skill they also assess more in detail about the strategic competence, actional competence, linguistic competence, socio-linguistic. Yeah, it is my evidence for.
Okay, yeah, so you are right when we talk about the authenticity of the test. So when we talk about the test authenticity, we try to refer to the fact that whether the test task truly reflects the real life task. So is there some kind of correspondence between the test task and the real life task? And because this kind of correspondence is going to be very important, if we do have this kind of correspondence, when you perform very well on the test, it's very likely for you to perform very well in the real life as well. So that is another kind of evidence that we need to make here in terms of the validity of the test itself. Okay, so both of you have just mentioned about the validity of the test itself. So we have to ensure that the test will reflect the real life task. That is the first thing that we need to have, because only when we have this kind of reflection or the true reflection, we can ensure that when the student perform very well on the test, they are very likely to perform well in the real life. And at the same time, according to the description of band score, they can do A, B, and C. And on the other hand, they cannot do D, E, F. Okay, so with A, B, C, D, it might be enough for them to work in the English-speaking country, for example. Okay, so that is some kind of evidence that we need to have here. Okay, but from my side of view, from my point of view, they are not the direct evidence. Yeah, they are some kind of backing that you may have. Yeah. So what might be some kind of direct evidence that we need to have here? And the group can be able to identify the direct evidence to show that this claim is very well justified. Yeah. So in order to ensure that 6.5 on IELTS band score is gonna be enough for the student to communicate well in academic setting in English-speaking countries, what we should do, what kind of evidence that we need to collect to justify it. Very simple. It's just like the way that you are doing a research project and you have a research question like, okay, is 6.5 on IELTS band score enough for the student to communicate well in academic setting in an English-speaking country? So what kind of evidence that you need to collect in order to answer the above question?
Sorry, sir. I think that we can try to collect some like real evidence with the specific requirements from like a larger, like a majority of university and colleges throughout the world.
Very good. So we can have some kind of requirements of the universities and colleges around the world. Very good. Yeah. So, and apart from it, we need to have some kind of interview or survey with the student who have already achieved 6.5 on IELTS band score, and those who achieve less than this, those who achieve more than this, whether they perform very well in the academic setting in terms of their language performance. Okay, so you can have some kind of interview or we can have some kind of questionnaire survey with the students who obtain 6.5 and lower on IELTS, academic test. Okay, and to see whether they can be able to perform well in terms of linguistically or some kind of communicatively performance task over here. Okay, so that is something that we need to have in terms of round. Yeah, so that is going to be some kind of direct round, some kind of empirical evidence. So from that, we can have a combination of theoretical and empirical evidence to justify this claim. But the plausibility of the evidence is only secured and ensured when we need to have some kind of warrant. What kind of warrants that we need to make? Yeah. So for example, after I have already go out there and interview the student who have already achieved 6.5 on IELTS band score, and they say that, okay, with 6.5 band score, I can perform very well in my university with all the assignment with the speaking, writing, listening, and reading that are required in my setting. Okay, so what are the warrants that we need to have here? Warrant is going to be the link between the claims and the ground. Okay, my claim is that 6.5 is enough for you to communicate in academic setting. And the evidence is that, okay, I have to go and interview and survey the current student who has already achieved 6.5 on academic IELTS band score to see how they can use the language in this setting. And they all say to me that they are very able to use the language in this setting and meet all the requirements in terms of language proficiency in this setting. Is this enough? Yeah. Is this enough? Okay. Okay, so is this enough? Or otherwise, we need to have some kind of warrant as well. What is going to be the connection between the grounds and the claim? What is going to be some kind of underlying assumption to make that this kind of evidence is going to be very useful to justify the claim above? What might be the assumption over here? Yeah. Okay, so we have the claim as 6.5 is enough. Okay, and we have the evidence is that student opinions. Yeah. And they agree that all agree that 6.5 enable them to communicate well in academic setting. Okay, so that is the two things that we need to have. But is this enough to justify the claim? Yeah, is there any kind of underlining assumption that we need to spell out and again justify before we can link this kind of evidence back to the claim?
I want to say something. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I was thinking that maybe from my own point of view, I think that the IELTS test score of 6.5 and above is representative of language competence, second language competence of the test takers to be required to study in English speaking countries.
Very good. And is that some kind of backing? It is some kind of backing. Yeah. Okay. So we can come back to the nature of the task and with the band descriptor and with the extent to which the task can represent the underlying construct of the speaking, of reading, of listening, and writing in the real life. Yeah, it's some kind of very good backings over here. But I asked about the warrant. Yeah, I asked about the warrant. Yeah, what kind of warrants that we need to make in order to connect between the evidence and the claim? Yeah, so we have the claims and evidence already. The claim is 6.5 is enough. And evidence is that we try to survey all the student opinions, and they all agree that 6.5 enables them to communicate very well in academic settings. Yeah, but is this enough to say that our claim is plausible and well justified? Yeah, if you are the reader of this kind of writing passage, when the writer say that, okay, in my opinion, 6.5 is enough, and I have already conducted a survey and interview with the student who has the IELTS 6.5 above and below, and they all agree that 6.5 can enable them to communicate very well in the academic settings. So is this enough for you to believe and to be persuaded about this kind of claim over here? Or is there any kind of underlying assumption that we have to make sure before we can be able to justify the claim? Okay, so one example of this one is that, on the survey, student telling the truth. Yeah, so that is the first warrant that I need to make. Of course, I can go out and interview the student. I can provide some kind of questionnaire survey with them. But if their answers are not reflecting the truth, yeah, so this kind of evidence can be questionable. And when their responses, their answers are questionable, so the value of the evidence is not something that we can rely on. Yeah, so apart from this kind of warrant, what are the warrants that we need to make here as well? Yeah.
For example, with 6.5 IELTS score, students can do some research. They can get involved actively in a lecture. They can understand the lecture and.
Okay, they say that they can do that already. Yeah, because they all agree that with 6.5, they can be able to communicate very well in academic setting. And communicate well in academic setting is mean that they can write, they can read, they can listen, they can speak all together in this kind of setting. They can finish all the requirements. Yeah, that is what they said. And that is what some kind of empirical evidence that we need to have. So the evidence seemed to be very positive to support the claim. But in order to ensure that this kind of claim is well justified, it's not only the evidence that we need more than this. We need to have some kind of warrant, some kind of underlying assumption that link between the evidence and the claim. And one of them is that are all the survey students telling the truth? And if they are all telling the truth, okay, the evidence is valid. And when the evidence is valid, of course, the claim is also plausible. Yeah. Another warrant that you may have is, oh, Jesus, it's just some kind of simple job. If you try to have some kind of detective story, yeah, and you can play this kind of game. Yeah, so claim is going to be some kind of things that you made against a criminal, and ground is going to be the evidence that you have collected. But in order to justify the claim by using the ground, you need to have some kind of underlying assumption. Yeah. Another assumption that you may have is that on IELTS test, are equally valid and difficult. And for example, have the same difficulty levels. Why do I need to have this kind of underlining assumption? And why it needs to be a warrant here? Okay, why it needs to be a warrant over here?
I think that since we try to investigate the opinions, like do research on like a large pool of like subjects. So we will have to make sure that is quite like the test is very valid as like it reflects the like general proficiency regardless of the number of the subjects we are investigating.
So why do we need to have the same difficulty level?
Can I share my own opinion?
Yeah. Go ahead, Henry.
I was thinking maybe to achieve a kind of consistency in the test task, and in the maybe in the outcome too.
Very good. So why do we need this kind of consistency at the warrant here to connect the ground to the claim? Okay. Yeah. So in order to prove that the claim is true and plausible, we need to have some kind of ground. Yeah. So we have the ground here already, but we also need to prove that the ground is valid and reliable. And how can you do that? You can do that by spell out all the assumption that we need to have. And after that, we need to double check this kind of assumption. And in the chat box over here, I just list two examples of the underlining assumption. The first one is that all the survey students are telling the truth. Because if the students are not telling the truth, their opinion cannot be reliable. The second one, all the IELTS tests must be equally valid and have the same difficulty level, especially for the second one. Because, for example, if I have two students, A and B, and A and B take one test. Yeah, and after that, C and D take another IELTS test. Yeah, so E and F again take another IELTS test. If the tests are not the same in terms of validity and in terms of difficulty level, so my 6.5 can be different from your 6.5. And for example, like the second test is supposed to be easier than the first test. And in this way, the 6.5 in the first test can be equivalent to 7.5 in the second test. And that's why this kind of 6.5 here is not consistent and it hasn't got the same meaning. And that is the reason why the ground here is invalid and unreliable. Okay, so that is the reason why apart from the grounds, we need to have some kind of warrants or some kind of underlying assumption about the validity and reliability of the ground. And in case that we are skeptical about the validity and reliability of the evidence, we need to double check it. Yeah, so that is about the warrant. And what about
excuse me? Yeah. So what do you mean? What you meant here is that there's no threshold, there's no fixed threshold for like the benchmark 6.5. So from that, from your warrants, from that assumptions that you can just not judge like each test by just say that, oh hey, you have 6.5 if you take the test A and then the test taker B just only have 6 because of the difficulties of the test. That's what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, for example, actually, IELTS tests can have different kind of tests altogether in one year, right? For example, Ngọc Anh, you take the test on May, right? And Henry takes the test on July. And I myself take a test on, for example, October. Yeah. And actually, we have 3 different kind of IELTS tests because IELTS do not want you to do the same test several times. Yeah, and the thing that we need to do here is that we have to ensure that the test on May, the test on July, and the test on October must be equally valid and must have the same difficulty level. If, for example, like all of us have 6.5, yeah, overall, right? But the test, my test, is easier, yeah, than that of Ngọc Anh and of Henry, right? So is my 6.5 equal to your 6.5? Is my 6.5 equal to your 6.5? It's not, right? And that is the reason why when I go out there and interview different students, because this kind of student are likely to take different kind of IELTS test, and they all get 6.5, but we have to ensure that all the IELTS tests must be the same in terms of validity and in terms of difficulty levels. Otherwise, even they have the same 6.5, but this kind of 6.5 mean different thing. For example, actually, because of the differences in the test difficulty, my 6.5 actually just only 5.5 on your test. Yeah, it's just equal to 5.5 to your test. Yeah, so if I take your test, I just achieve 5.5 instead of 6.5 because my test is quite easy as compared to yours. So that is the reason why we have to ensure that all the tests that the student are taking here, yeah, roughly the same in terms of validity and in terms of difficulty level. Yeah, do you see what I mean, Ngọc Anh?
Yes, I got your point. Thank you.
Yeah. So that is a warrant or some kind of underlying assumption that we need to have in order to ensure that all the evidence that we have just collected is very valid and reliable. Otherwise, this kind of evidence cannot be used in order to justify the claim above. However, any kind of questions, any kind of research, any kind of claim has some kind of limitation. And sometimes we need to acknowledge this kind of limitation. And how can we do so? Can you make a guess? Yeah, so even the claim over here, can it hold true for every single cases? Yeah. Whereas this kind of claim over here, 6.5 is enough for you to communicate very well in academic setting in an English-speaking country. So does this kind of claim hold true for every single case?
Definitely not, because as you said before.
Okay, so can you give me some kind of example of exceptional case?
Exceptional cases. I mean, as you said before, you know, the score can be varied from the because of the difficulties of the test of each test.
Yeah.
But
very good.
I think that is, I think that this claim generally can be true for most of the case, but not every case. Yes.
Very good. I love the word generally over here. And when you add the word generally or something like often or something like can be or to a great extent or something like in most of cases. Yeah. So when you try to add this kind of hedging devices into your claim, actually you have already used a quantifier. Yeah, so that is some kind of quantifier to make the claim more tentative. And in this way, we can downturn the certainty of the claim. So for any kind of claim, it cannot be true for every single case. That's why we normally talk about the majorities of the cases. And apart from the thing that I just mentioned about the inconsistency of the difficulty level of the test, we also have something different. For example, like some people are able to achieve 6.5, not because of their true second language ability, but because they have some kind of test wise. What does this mean for test Y? Yeah, some people can achieve 6.5 just by using some kind of, yes, they have some kind of test Y ability. It means that they have some kind of.
It means that they have some test taking tips and tricks.
Yeah,
or maybe they have some, yeah.
Yeah,
so they have some skills in test taking because they understand the test wholeheartedly. So.
Yeah, very good. You are right. So actually, they just want to prepare to achieve 6.5. So they will go to some kind of IELTS training center. And here they can learn about some kind of exam tips, some kind of exam strategies. And now they can even pay money for the part examiners, the former examiners of IELTS testing center, and they can learn about the testing strategies. And in this way, they can achieve 6.5 based on the strategy itself, rather than their true ability. Okay, so that is another thing that we need to talk about, some kind of exceptional cases. So this kind of claim can hold true for the majorities of cases, but we also acknowledge that there are some kind of rare, some kind of exceptional cases that we cannot account here in this kind of claim. And that is the reason why we need to have some kind of qualifiers. And for most of the claims, we need to have some kind of hedging devices in order to downturn and in order to reduce the certainties of the claim. And at the same time, rebuttals. What does this mean for rebuttals? Yeah. Okay. What might be the plausible rebuttals over here? Yeah. So who might argue against us? And what is their opinion about this? In what way can they attack us, our view?
Can I share my opinion?
Yeah. Go ahead, Henry.
I think in terms of rebuttal, the IELTS test score of 6.5 and above may not be, or rather cannot be reliable and valid in all situations, but it is representative of competencies in the second language speaking test or academic test.
Very good. And that is a very good rebuttal, because in IELTS test, we cannot include all the tasks that a student need to perform in academic setting. Of course, for example, writing, the student need to do something like conduct a research, and after that, a research project, and after that, they need to report this kind of research project. But actually, in IELTS writing, they cannot do so. They're just required to describe some kind of process, some kind of table, and give some kind of argumentative essay or some kind of discursive essay. But there's nothing related to research report. Yeah, like in terms of speaking, of course, they can have something like interviews, they can have something like opinion sharing, but they have nothing related to presentation. And you know for sure that in academic setting, formal presentation is going to be a very popular genre that a student need to do. Okay, so that is the reason why even I can achieve very high band score in terms of IELTS, it doesn't guarantee that I can be able to communicate very well in many different kind of genres in the upcoming settings, in the upcoming context in which I study my MA or my PhD study. Okay. Yeah, so that is about the rebuttal, and at the same time, we can counter argue it. Yeah, you can say that, of course, on the practicality issue, you cannot include all the tasks. So we have to select the most representative task to include in the task. And from this kind of representative task, we can infer about the performance in other tasks. Okay, so that is the things that we need to bear in mind when we talk about the Tuomin argument model. And here I would like to bring the story back to the language assessment. And that is the way that we are going to make the claim in the text validation. Yes, the main purpose of the text validation process is to ensure that any kind of claims that we make about the ways that we use the test score and the ways that we make the decision based on the test score is valid, is reliable, is well justified. And in order to do so, we need to collect the relevant evidence. And at the same time, we need to spell out different kind of underlying assumption that can be manifested in your warrant. And we know for sure that for any claim, it cannot be holding true for every single case. That is the reason why our claim need to have some kind of qualifiers. In this way, we can reduce the certainty of our claim. And at the same time, we need to put ourselves in the shoe of the opponent to see what might the attacker in terms of point of view, and from that we can prepare to bring up the evidence to counter argue their opinion. Okay, so that is a job of the test validation. Okay, and today I am going to introduce you to a new model. And in this kind of model, we are going to use argument as the key component in the process of validation. And I would like you to spend some time, look at the Kane validity argument model. And I do hope that you have some time reading the materials that I sent you in the previous lesson. Have you received it? The documents that I sent to Hun and asked Hun to spread it out to you. Have you all received it and have you all read it? Yeah, a critical review of the approaches for testing validation. Yeah, so in case that you haven't read it, here is going to be the model proposed by Kane in 2013. And in his model, we have two main components over here. So in order to carry out a test validation process, we need to build up and to prove and justify two types of argument. So first one is interpretive argument, and the second one is the validity argument. So in a very simple term, relating the interpretive argument, we need to spell out all the underlying assumption and inference that we need to make for the test score interpretation and use based on the test performance. Okay, for example, we have the test score, and now is our decision. So in order to go from the test score into the decision, how many kind of assumptions that we have to make? How many kind of inference that you have to make? Do you have enough evidence to justify the plausibility of that assumption or of that inference? So in this case, this kind of underlying assumption and inference are supposed to be your claim. Okay, so that is some kind of underlying claims that you base yourself on in order to make the decision based on the test score. For example, if my student sit for the final examination, so based on the score, I can decide whether this student can be able to move to the next course or he has to take the whole course again. So in order to justify the plausibility of this kind of decision, I have to make several kind of inferences, several kind of claims. For example, so the test score truly reflect his ability is one claim. So for this kind of claim, I have to collect some kind of relevant evidence in order to justify the claim. For example, I can come back to this kind of student and interview him or her about whether he was actually engaged in doing the test in the previous section or not. In this way, when he was truly engaged in the test, so I can make assumption that he as a true score here truly reflect his true ability. So that is about the first one. So in the interpretive argument, we need to spell out all the claims that we need to have in order to go from the test score to the conclusion that we have, the decision that we make from the test score. And and in the previous section, I talked about the evidence. This kind of evidence over here is very crucial because a claim about just a claim, it's just my inference. It's just about my assumption. And in order to substantiate, in order to justify this kind of claim, I need to have some kind of evidence. And this kind of evidence can go from the theory, or if the evidence can go from the real life data. Okay, for example, here we have the theory about the what writing ability should include, what kind of underlying knowledge, what kind of underlying skill that we need to have. Yeah, it's about the theoretical evidence. What about the empirical evidence? For example, you come back to the student to interview them. So we have some kind of empirical evidence. And by combining this kind of two evidence in some kind of very coherent and logical way, I can justify the claim above. So in the Kane validity argument model, there are two things that we need to do. The first one, we need to spell out all the underlying assumption and of inference that we need to go from the test score to the decision that we make on the test score. And in order to do so, we need to collect different kind of evidence to justify that. Okay. So any questions that you may have on this model over here? Yeah. Is this clear so far?
Sorry, I have a question on the validity argument. Please, can you explain it again so that I can catch up with what you meant?
Okay, so in this kind of model of test validation, we need to have two kind of arguments. In the first argument, we need to explain or we need to make explicit on the underlying assumption and inference that we need to have to go from the test score to the decision that we make. Now, for example, in my final examination, my students sat for the test, and after that, they achieve some kind of score. I have to make some kind of decision on this kind of score. For example, student A and B were able to move forward to the next upcoming course, but the student C and D perform very poorly, so they need to retake the whole course again. Okay, so validity arguments say that if you want to say for sure that your decision is plausible, you have to spell out all the underlying assumption. And of course, we have different kind of assumption in this very case. The first assumption that I might have is that the test score truly reflect the student ability. Okay, so that is the underlying assumption. And the second one, for example, I say that, okay, the test does reflect the underlying construct of what I am going to measure. So that is another assumption. And the next one is that my student health was very adequate and sufficient on the test day. That is another assumption. So we have many assumptions in order to make the final decision that the student should go up into the next course and the student need to retake the whole course. Okay, but they are just some kind of personal opinion based on the test score. And in order to justify this kind of opinion, I need to have some kind of evidence to substantiate them. And this evidence can come from the theories, and this kind of evidence can come from the real life data as well. When I say that, the test score truly reflect the student ability. I need to collect the evidence to show that the student was actually engaged with the test on the test day. So one way to double check this kind of assumption is that I need to go back and interview the student to see whether they were actually engaged with the test. They took the test very seriously. So they do not have some kind of random guesses, or they do not copy the paper of their peers, for example. And from the theoretical perspective, so we can bring out some kind of other evidence as well. When I say that, the test very beautifully represent the underlying construct of writing ability, for example. So I have to go into the theory, to the definition of writing ability, what kind of knowledge, what kind of skills that I need to have in order to perform well in second language writing. And whether the test include all this kind of knowledge and skills in its content. Okay, so that is the two things that we need to do. So the first one, we need to spell out all the assumptions that we may have in order to go from the test score into the final decision. And after that, we have to collect the relevant evidence in order to justify and to qualify, to verify the assumption, or in some kind of very plain language, to double check the plausibility of this kind of assumption. Is this clear to you, Henry?
Yes, it's clearer now.
Okay, so thank you very much. So the model is quite clear and it's quite straightforward. We just go and tell about what we think in terms of opinion, in terms of claim. And after that, we have to collect the evidence to support that claim. So bring us back to the previous model by Turkmen. And yeah, so that is a basic thing, but in terms of first argument, actually we have different kind of phases. We have different kind of argument. We have different kind of assumption and inference that we need to make. Yeah, so here is gonna be the thing that we need to do. Yeah, so we have observation, we have observed score, universe score, target score, and decision. And I say that we need to go from the score into the decision. And in order to go from the score into the decision, we need to have different kind of inference. And for example, we have inference about evaluation. We have inference about generalization. We have inference about extrapolation. We have inference about the utilization. And I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to look at this kind of flow chart over here and tell me, what is that? Yeah, what do they mean? What kind of evaluation argument mean? What does this mean for generalization mean? What does this mean for extrapolation mean? And what does this mean for utilization mean? Yeah. What is going to be the underlying assumption in each of argument over here? Okay, so observation here, what does this mean? Yeah, what does this mean for observation? Can you make a guess? Yeah. So what does this mean for observation? Can I make a guess? In terms of the test, what might be the observation over here? Yeah, observation of what? Yeah, so actually observation here is going to be the observation of the test performance. Yeah, in other words, it's going to be the test responses. Yeah, so for example, when you sit for IELTS writing test, the observation here is going to be observation of your writing performance. And that is going to be your writing paper. Okay, and from observation, we have some kind of underlining assumption about the observed score. And the underlining assumption over here is that, okay, so the test performance is appropriately observed and score. Yeah, so that is the first underlining assumption that we need to have for evaluation. So evaluation here refers to the scoring procedure. Okay, whether the test papers are effectively scored. Okay, so that is going to be the first assumption. And for the first assumption over here, can you please tell me what kind of evidence that we need to have? Yeah, my claim is the test performance is effectively observed and scored. What kind of evidence that we need to have here in order to justify the above assumption? Okay. What kind of evidence that you may have, we need to have? Hello? Yeah.
I think we need this. We need to get the scores. We need to get the scores of performances of students, and we need to see. We need to draft out what constitute. We need to draft out the criteria for marking them or scoring them, and we need to know how they responded, whether they were really engaged in the test when they did it, and we should base it on maybe theoretical rationales.
Lovely. You are right, Henry. Okay, so the first one is that the test performance is effectively observed. Okay, so in this way, we talk about the engagement of the student with the test. Suppose that the test is well designed already. Okay, so how can we do that? So in the Western country, the performance can be camcorded and the performance can be observed by some kind of supervisor. Okay, so when you sit for IELTS test, we have some kind of facilitators who are present in the same testing room with you. And apart from the fact that they are there in order to facilitate your testing procedure, they also observe how you perform the test. Okay, so in some cases, the human being can be replaced by some kind of camcorders. With some kind of camcorders. So the camcorders will be the tool or the devices that can record on your performance as well. And after that, we need to effectively score the test performance. And in order to ensure this kind of claim, we have to collect the evidence from the test paper, from the marking rubric, from the rater, and the consistency of the rater outcome as well. Yeah, so that is some kind of evidence that we need to have here. In the first one is about evaluation. Yeah, so evaluation argument is a claim and the claim is here. So the test performance is appropriately observed and scored. And we have to find out the relevant evidence to justify it. And that is the first step in the interpretive argument. Okay, and what about the generalization? The generalization is mean that, okay, if I carried out the same test again several times, your test score must be the same. If I carried out the test in a a similar condition, your test score must be the same. Okay, so that is a thing that we need to have here. Okay, so what kind of evidence that we can break here? Yeah. Yeah, so the second claim for the second argument is that the test performance is consistent over time and testing conditions. Yeah. So if I carried out the same test with you again several times, your outcome must be the same. And if I carried out the test in a similar condition, your outcome must be the same. Okay, that is about generalization. So we talk about the internal consistency as the test. Okay, so what kind of evidence that we need to make here and to generate here? Yeah, to support the claim, the second claim over here. Okay. Anybody who can help me with this? Yeah, so I have to make a second assumption, a second inference is that if I carried out the test again at different times and as a different condition, your testing outcome must be the same. What kind of evidence that we can use in order to justify the claim above?
I think maybe we can use empirical evidence.
Yeah, how can you do that?
So we just do it. We carry out the test several times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can, yeah, very good. Yeah, so we carried out the test several times, or we can divide the test into two halves. Yeah, so we can compare the first half with the second half because basically it's about the internal consistency of the test. Very good one. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so we can carry out the same test several times, or we can compare two similar tests several times. Yeah, so it's going to be something that we can use over here. And another one is about extrapolating. Yeah, extrapolating. Yeah, so it's related to the next claim. The claim over here is that the test performance can well predict their future performance. Okay, so here's gonna be the claim number 3 about extrapolation. Yeah, so extrapolation is that we are going to use one example in order to predict about multiple examples in the future. So from the test score of the student, we can claim that this kind of test performance can be able to predict very well for their future performance. So what kind of evidence that we need to have here in order to justify this one? Yeah, in order to justify this assumption, this inference, this claim, what kind of evidence we have to make? Thu Hằng, Phạm Thu Hằng.
Yes.
Yes. So what kind of evidence that we have to collect here in order to justify the claim that the student test performance can well predict the future performance?
Yeah, I need some time to think. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. What about the other students over here? Mỹ Hạnh. Trương Mỹ Hạnh, are you there? Okay. Okay, so the evidence that you can bring up here in order to justify the claim above, is the claim number 3 over here, is that we need to ensure that there is a nice correspondence between the test task and the real life task. So having that said, one kind of direct evidence for this kind of claim is that we need to ensure the test authenticity. Yeah, so the test must duplicate or must very well represent the actual language used in the real life. Yeah, and the final one over here from the score and the decision. And for the score to the decision, we can have a final claim whether the test score, yeah, reflect or represents the underlining test construct to ensure the plausibility of the final decision. Okay. Yeah, so whether the test score, yeah, represents the underlying test construct to ensure the plausibility of the final decision. Okay, so if we ensure that the target score over here is gonna be similar, yeah, it substantiates the decision. Okay, so in this way, we have to come back, for example, interview the student. For example, if I achieve 6.5, whether I am able to perform very well in all the linguistic task or communicative task in the academic setting. Yeah. So here is gonna be the model in which we try to spell out different kind of assumption underlining 1, 2, 3, and 4 argument. Yeah. So here, evaluation, generalization, extrapolation, and utilization are 4 main arguments that we need to make to go from the test score to the decision. And in order to justify this kind of argument, we have to find relevant evidence, relevant warrants, relevant backings, relevant rebuttals. And from that, we can ensure that our argument is strong, validated. Okay. However, this kind of models proposed by Kane has some kind of limitation. And can you please tell me what is missing here? What is missing here? Yeah. You go from the test score, from the test performance to the decision. But there's something missed here. There's something missing here. What is it? Yeah, we go from the observation to the decision, but there is something missing here. Can you tell me what is missed? What is missing, sorry?
I think the theoretical rationales upon which the abilities or the language that should be defined are missing.
Very good. Yeah. So what to measure, how to measure, what is the underlying construct of the test, how the construct is put into practice. Yeah. And apart from this, we talk about the theories over here. This kind of models over here focus too much on empirical data, on some kind of use aspect, but it's not about the theory aspect. That is the reason why Chappell and his colleagues has already developed another procedure and over here. And as you said, Henry, the target domain is going to be here. You have what to measure. Yeah. And in this kind of target domain, we are going to define what to assess. What is the test underlying construct? How this kind of constructs can be put into practice in the actual test. And here can be supposed to be the test and the actual language use of student in the real life. And from that, we can have some kind of sample observation. It's gonna be the first one in the previous model. Yeah, the first domain in the previous model is about observation, and it's gonna be here sample of observation. It's about the test performance. Observed score is about the evaluation. Yeah, it's to be more precise, it's gonna be the scoring over here. And from the observed score, we need to ensure that the score must remain the same across different kind of testing time and testing condition. Is about generalization. And the same holds true for the previous model. And after that, from this kind of consistent score, we need to ensure that this kind of score can predict the future performance very well. So we have extrapolation over here. And from this kind of extrapolation, we need to have two other inferences before we come to the decision. The first one is that if this kind of score can predict very well for their future performance, so it must align with some kind of theory in our field. Because in this way, we can generalize this kind of score not only to the future performance, but to other contexts as well. And the final one, from this kind of construct over here, what kind of label, what kind of score, what kind of performance they can be described. For example, in IELTS with 6.5, you can be some kind of fair user. With 7.5, you are good user. With 9, you are expert user. So they are some kind of label to describe the ability of the student and also to discriminate one student from another. And from that, I can make the decision. So for example, in case of IELTS, any student achieve the good user label can go to another country to study or work. So that is a decision. And this kind of decision based on the label, that is, if they achieve 6.5, 7.5, they can be good or independent user. Okay, so in this way, this kind of evidence can be used in order to justify the final decision. They are able to work and to study in another country. So if we compare this model with the previous model, we can see that the previous model normally focused on the empirical evidence and empirical argument. And the second model tried to combine both the theory and practice together, or the theory and the use together. And we have a more comprehensive models over here. Okay, so from this kind of things over here, you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arguments or 6 underlying assumptions altogether. Or in the simple term, we have 6 claims altogether. And for every single claim, we are going to collect the evidence for this. And of course, I cannot go one claim to another, but I will explain and also demonstrate one claim, over here. One claim is over here. The very first claim is about the scoring procedure. And from the observation over here, whether the performance is suitably, effectively observed and scored. Okay. Now, here is one example. From this one, can you please tell me what is the claim? What is the evidence and what is a warrant? Here I have a table, and the first step in the arguments-based validation is that we need to build up the argument together with the relevant warrants and evidence. So in this one over here, what is the claim? Where can you find the claim? What is the evidence and what is the warrant? And what is the relationship between and among them? Nguyễn Thị Hải Yến. Hải Yến, are you there? Phạm Tùng. Hello, Phạm Tùng. No response from your side. Is the next one Nguyễn Thị Minh Phương. Okay, Quang Dũng.
I'm here, but I haven't got the answer yet.
Okay, so thank you. Phương Liên, Nguyễn Phương Liên. What is the claim here? What is the warrant and what is the evidence? And what is going to be the relationship between among them?
Do you think that they are all presented on the screen? So
Yeah.
Probably the claim is it's the evaluation inference.
You're right. And what is going to be the relationship between them?
Let me think.
So actually the relationship between and among this kind of three components over here is that we need to collect all the evidence over here. This evidence will help you to answer all the warrants. And when all the warrants are accepted, you can make the claim. Okay, so that is a job that we need to have over here. Okay, so the first one is going to be the claim. So the test taker performance on the listening test. Here is going to be the listening test in VSTEP. And one of my colleagues has already tried to use this kind of model in order to validate the quality of this kind of test over here. And the first claim that she made is that the test taker's performance on the listening of the VSTEP test was appropriately observed and scored. And in order to justify this kind of claim, we need this kind of evidence. And this kind of evidence will be used to justify the warrants over here. And when all the warrants are accepted, we can support this kind of claim. And now we go from one to another in terms of evidence. Okay, so having that said, I would like to say that the first step in this kind of validation is that we need to develop a validity argument. And in this way, that is about evaluation argument. And another name for this is going to be evaluation inference. Okay, so first make the claim together with warrants and evidence. And now we go to the first evidence, first type of evidence, item difficulty. How can you understand it? And how it can be related to the claim above? Why do we need to track the item difficulty? Why do we need to track the item difficulty?
Because we need to make sure that the test is challenging enough for a student at any level.
Very good. Okay, so the test should not be too easy. The test should not be too difficult. Okay, so the first one we need to do is that we need to check the difficulty items, difficulty levels of the items. And now I would like you to look at one examples. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to observe every raw score for 8 test items from every single student. And after that, we need to put this kind of raw score into a model some kind of computational model. And in this case, I use Rasch models analysis. And the analysis over here can give me the results about the item difficulty. That is the first one. Now here, I would like you to look at the outcome of this kind of analysis. And from that, can you please tell me whether the test is suitable for the student in terms of difficulty level? Okay, it's not here. Sorry, that's this one. Hang on a second. Okay, it's gonna be here. Okay, can you see it? I will send this one via chat box as well. So you can have a closer look at this. And after sending it to you, I am going to introduce what it is. I'm sorry. I need to close this kind of test first. Okay. Yes. Okay, so have you received the file?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, I now open the file here in from my side. Okay, so can you see this kind of map over here? From the Rasch model analysis, you can see the difficulty levels of item on the right-hand side over here. Here is a person item map. In the right-hand side, you're gonna see the items. So in this kind of listening test, we have 35 items on together. You can see the numbers of items over here. And in this kind of arrangement, this kind of items are arranged in terms of difficulty level. The easiest item is gonna be here. And the most difficult item is gonna be.
Excuse me, I think that you shared the wrong side.
Oh, me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will share it again. Have you seen it now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, very good. And here is going to be the Rasch model outcome from the Rasch model analysis. In this kind of model, you can see the person and item map. And here on the right-hand side is the item. In this listening test, you have 35 items on together. You can see the number of the items over here. And here is going to be number 1, 2, and on the way up to number 35. Okay, and on the left-hand side is the number of the test taker together with their performance. Okay, so on the right-hand side, the difficulty level of the test item are arranged from the lowest one to the highest one. So the item number 1, 2, and 4 are the easiest one. The item number 10, 29, and 22 are the most difficult items. And that is about the item difficulty. And here is the number of the students who have this one correct. For example, the number 10 over here, nobody is able to answer it correctly. For the item number 29, only the student with the code G1 is able to answer it correctly. For the item number 22, there are 2 students out of 200 students can be able to answer it correctly. Okay, and can you please study this kind of person and item math and tell me whether this kind of test is adequate in terms of difficulty level to the student. Here is one example of the V-STEP listening test. Okay, yeah, so after studying this kind of person and item math for a while, can you please tell me whether this kind of test is gonna be suitable or appropriate in terms of difficulty level? So this kind of V-STEP is for level 3, 4, and 5. Yeah.
Sorry, sir, can I share my point of view?
Yes.
Looking at this chart, I just have an idea of that the difficulty of the test, like it's not really appropriate as I guess if the difficulty level is suitable for the students, then the chart may look very much like a triangle. I mean, with the bottom, with the largest like area, as you mentioned earlier, that the questions 1, 2, and 4 are the easiest one, right?
Very good. Yeah.
So I think that there should be like the largest proportion of the students who are able to answer them correctly.
Very
then
well.
We will move like up a little bit with the medium or intermediate level of difficulty in the middle, and then for the top with the 3 most challenging questions, then like it's okay there because I can see like very few students manage to answer them accurately.
Very good. Very good.
Correctly.
Okay, so you're right. This kind of difficulty levels of the test is not very appropriate for the target students. I will take out maybe 2 evidence, very critical evidence over here. Because the difficulty level of the test items will go all the way from the bottom to the top over here. And can you please focus on the tops over here? How many items are supposed to be challenging? Can you please count for me how many items, yeah, are supposed to be challenging to the student? Yeah, how many?
10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so we have 11 items are challenging. And how many students can answer this challenging items?
9.
Yeah, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 12, 13, 14, 16, 15 and 16. So we have 11 challenging items. 11 out of 35. But we can have only 16 out of 200 can be able to answer this one. 11 out of 35 is 35. How many percent is it? 11 out of 35 is supposed to be about
30%. 30%.
Yeah, 35. Yeah, 30%. Yeah, about 30%. Yeah. So 1/3, very good. So 1/3 of the items are too challenging. That only how many percent of students can answer it? Yeah, 16 out of 200. It's less than 10%.
10%.
Yeah, less than 10%. So having that said, 1/3 of all the questions in the test are too difficult for the student. Only less than 10% of the students are able to answer it. So it's gonna be very, very difficult for the student to answer. And at the same time, the most student is gonna be here. Most of the student is gonna be here. Yeah, yeah. So they are able to answer some of the very easy one. Most of the student is gonna be here, easy and moderate items. But they fail to answer some kind of very tricky question above, and the number of tricky question and challenging question is going to be too much. And another evidence that bring up by the lady above is about the guys over here. The guys over here. This one is some kind of very easy question. It's supposed to be the easiest question, but the number of the students who are able to answer them correctly is quite limited. So the test is quite odd, right? The test is quite odd. So on one hand, it's going to be too difficult. On the other hand, even for some kind of easy sentence, there are few students who are able to answer it. But for some kind of middle range questions, yeah, most of the students can be able to answer them. So it's quite odd, right? In terms of difficulty level. Yeah. Okay. So that is the first way that we look at the difficulty level of the student, of the test item. And as I said from the beginning, this kind of test is to measure. It's going to be V-step 3, 4, and 5. So it's measure what? It's V-step. It's V-step level 3, 4, and 5. Have you seen the passages over here? Yes, a slide. Have you seen the slide over here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this kind of listening test is to measure the student listening ability on V-step test. And we are going to measure 3 levels, 3, 4, and 5. And according to this kind of 3 parts over here, so part number 1 is supposed to be the easiest one. So part number 2 is going to be a little bit moderate. And the final one is supposed to be the hardest one. Yeah. So the score on the item from number 1 to 8, 9 to 20, from 20 to 35 must go hand in hand with the difficulty level. And now, can you please double check it by looking at the following? Yeah, it's gonna be the following page table. I'm going to send you this one first. I'm sorry, I need to close down first. Yeah, the document is coming to your side now. Yeah, I do hope that you have already received it. Item and task difficulty level. Have you got it?
Yes, of course.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. And now we are going to look at the item and task difficulty levels here. Yeah, so here is a list of items. Item goes all the way from 1 to 35, and they are arranged according to the difficulty level. Yeah, as we can see from the previous map, item number 10 is gonna be the most challenging one. And item number 2 and 4 is gonna be the easiest one. And here is gonna be the difficulty level measured by logic unit. Yeah, the more logic unit you have, the more.
Teacher.
Yeah.
We are seeing your folder.
Oh,
Your
I'm
screen
sorry,
is
I'm sorry,
just
sorry.
folder. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Do you hope that you can see the slide now, or the document now?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so in this kind of tables over here, we are going to look at the difficulty level of the item. It can be decided by the number of students answer this kind of item correctly. And after that, it converts the raw score into the logic unit over here. So the item number 10 here, as you can see in the previous math, is supposed to be the most challenging one. And the item number 2 is over here are supposed to be the easiest one. And if you can look at this kind of logic unit over here, measure, it's about the difficulty level. And the more or the higher logic unit that we have, the more challenging the item is. Okay, and you can compare with the parts of the test over here. In the previous slide, as I said, the part number 1 is going to be the easiest one. The part number 2 is going to be the moderate one. And the part number 3 is going to be the most challenging one. And is this kind of actual difficulty level here support that claim? Yeah, so now we look at the part number 1 first. Where can you find the evidence for part number 1? Yeah, it's gonna be here, right? Part number 1. Is this easy or difficult or moderate? Yeah, so here is going to be all the items. And we have learned that the item from in the part number 1, from 0 to 8, item number 1 to number 8 is going to be easy. Yeah, part number 2 is going to be moderate. Part number 3 is going to be difficult. Yeah, sorry, part number 2 is moderate. Yeah, part number 3 is difficult. Can you please study this kind of difficulty levels over here? And as the actual test score support that claim? Yeah, supporting that claim. Yeah. So part number 1 is supposed to be the easiest one. Yeah, for example, say item number 3 over here. Is this easy?
Yes.
No, actually, it's supposed to be moderate because the easy part is going to be here. Yeah, easy part is going to be here. Yeah, most of the items in the part is part number 1, right? Yeah. Okay, but this one is not. Okay, so now part number 2 is supposed to be moderate. As a moderate, now what is the most challenging one? The most challenging one is going to be in the part number 2. And part number 2 over here as well. Yeah. And pass number 3 is supposed to be the most challenging one, but actually it's fall into the moderate and even the easiest one over here. Okay, so is our claim supported by the evidence from the difficulty level? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay, you are right. Okay, so on the one hand, this kind of test is too difficult for the target student. And on the other hand, this test is claimed to measure 3 different levels, level 3, level 4, and level 5. And the part number 1 is supposed to be the easiest one. So part number 2 is supposed to be the moderate one. And the part number 3 are the most challenging one. However, the part number 3 are supposed to be the moderate one. And the part number 2 are supposed to be the hardest one, because you can see many items in the part number 2 are very challenging. Yeah, the part number 2 over here are very challenging. So with this kind of evidence, we have already shown that the first variant is not supported. Yeah, I would like to go back to this one. Yeah, so the variant over here, the test item difficulty was appropriate for test taker, but actually when we go into the evidence and the evidence show that the test items are too challenging for the current student. And on the other hand, yeah, it's not continually increase in terms of difficulty level as we suppose, because the task as a part number 2 is supposed to be moderate in terms of difficulty level, but actually the part number 2 is supposed to be the most challenging part. So part number 3 is supposed to be the most challenging part, but actually it's less difficult than the part number 2. So the first variant is not accepted, it's not justified. Yeah. So now, what about the second one? Have you ever heard of the phrase discriminating power? Have you ever heard about this kind of phrase before? Discrimination power. And what does this mean? Yeah, so we have the phrase discrimination power. Or some people is called discriminating, or some kind of discriminatory power. Yeah. What does this mean for this? What does this mean for this? Have you ever heard of this before? Okay, so what is the purpose of this kind of listening test? Yeah, what is the purpose of this listening test? So we need to discriminate what? The students into how many levels altogether? Yeah, we need to use the listening levels of student into out the evidence that the test items can be able to discriminate the student into the 3 levels. And not only about the 3 levels, it's also about smaller group in each level as well. Yeah, and smaller groups in each level. Okay, so it's going to be the second quadrant over here. Because we want to say that this student achieved level 3, this student achieved level 4, and the other student achieved the level 5. So in order to do so, we have to look at the discriminating power of this kind of item. So in this one, having such the item must have the capacity to discriminate the student listening ability into at least different 3 levels. And at the same time, even the smaller groups in each level. How can we do so? We have to look at the discrimination indices from the Rasch model. And the rule of thumb is that, so if we have some kind of discrimination indices go from 0.01 to 0.34, it's going to be very low. And if the indices go from 0.65 to 1.34, it has some kind of moderate discriminatory power. And if we have some kind of 1.70 or above, we have some kind of very high discriminative level. So now I am going to show you the result from the Rasch model about the discriminative indices. And from that, can you please tell me whether the test item in the above listening test are able to discriminate the student into different levels and even the smaller group in each level? Yes, the file is coming to you. Okay. So from this kind of file over here, have you seen it? The discrimination indices. Okay. So here is gonna be the items that we have from item number 1 to item number 35. And they are also arranged according to the difficulty level. But now our focus is about the discrimination indices. And if we look at the results over here, what can you see? This kind of test item, moderate, moderate, high, high, moderate, moderate, very high, moderate. We have only 2 items, item number 9 and item number 11, that have very low discrimination indices. And for 32 other items, they either have moderate, high, or very high discrimination item power. Okay, so from that, what kind of conclusion can we make? From that, what kind of conclusion can we make? Do the test item separate the student into at least 3 levels and even smaller groups within each level? The answer is Yes, right. Because when you look at the why no, Hồng Nhung? Because all the item now. Yeah, so we have 32 items with moderate, high, or very high discrimination indices. So 33, I guess, out of 35. So that is going to be a very high number. Only 2 items that have very low discriminatory power. That are item number 9 and number 11, I guess. Yeah, so that is the reason why we say that this kind of test has a very high discrimination power. And in this way, the test would be able to classify the student listening ability into at least 3 levels as we expect, like level number 3, 4, and 5, and even smaller group within each level. Okay, so if we come back to the claims that we made from the previous one, yeah, the second variant over here. Yes, the second variant over here is that all the item has reasonable discriminating power. So we can say that, okay, so this variant is accepted. Yeah, so previous variant is not accepted. And the final variant that we need to make here is that all the test items are relevant to the listening construct, to the underlying construct of the test. And in order to do so, we have to look at the item and construct fit to see whether this kind of item fits the underlying construct. How many items fit the construct and how many items are not fit to the target construct. And it's going to be over here. Yeah, so the bubble chart over here from the Rasch model analysis showing how an item fits the underlying construct. If the item logics go from -2 to +2, it fits the underlying construct. And this one is going to be overfit. It still fits the construct, but is not very useful because it overfit. It means that it can be similar to some items here. And here it's going to be something that cannot fit the construct. And from this kind of examples over here, can you please look at this kind of bubble chart? Yeah, so any items that lie within this kind of rectangular, yeah, is able to fit the underlying construct. The items over here also fit the construct, but they are not useful because they have the same value as the one here in this kind of rectangular. And we have some kind of items over here, very small. I guess 3 of them are not suitable to the target construct. Okay, so from this kind of bubble chart over here, can you please tell me whether this kind of test items over here fits the underlying construct? To what extent? Yeah, so from this kind of bubble chart, how many items fit the test construct? Yeah, can you count how many items fit the test construct?
About 25.
How many? I could not hear you. Sorry.
About 25 fit the construct.
25. I think that is more than 25. It's gonna be about 32 out of 35 because we have only 3 of them out of the test construct over here. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so 3 of them, and all the other one fits the test construct. But you are right. Yeah, some of them are fit very nicely because the score goes from -2 to +2. Some of the items over here also fit the test construct, but Yeah, so they are not very useful because in nature, they resemble some of the item within this kind of rectangular. Okay, so this kind of item pose no threat. The items over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 items overfit. So they are not useful. Yeah, not useful because in nature, they have the same value as those in the -2 to +2 range. Yeah, the beautiful fit over here. Okay, so we can have 3 items not fit, misfit. We have about 8 items overfit. And we have about 24, I guess, item fit. Okay, so altogether we have about 32 items that fit the construct. Yeah, so 32 over 35, how many percent is it? How many percent is it? It's for example, I think 95, I guess. Okay, 90, I guess.
Actually, 91.
91, yeah, 91, I guess. Okay, good one. So 91 is going to be a good amount of feed items already. Okay, yeah, so there are 3 items that we need to remove from the test because they are measuring something else. Item and fit construct is to measure the extent to which the item measure exactly what we intend to measure, nothing else. And the 3 items over here, for example, the item number 11 and 34 are measure something else, but not the listening ability of the student. And even the item number 9 over here. So this kind of 3 items here must be removed from the test. And this kind of items over here are not very useful. And because they are not very useful, because in nature they are resemble to some of the items in this kind of rectangular shape. So we can also remove this one or modify this one. So there are at least 11 items that we need to modify or remove. And in a very strict term, we have 24 items that it nicely fit to the underlying construct. Okay. So with this kind of evidence over here, we come back to the warrant that we have. Yeah, so the test item were relevant to the target listening construct, and the answer is yes, because we have more than 91% of the test item fits the underlying construct. And we say no to the first one, we say yes to the second claim as a warrant, we say yes to the final claim over here. And from this one, we need to build up, generating the warrant and justify the claim, because we say no to the first warrant, we say yes to the second one, we say yes to the next one. So the performance of the test taker on the listening test are appropriately observed and scored to an acceptable extent. Yeah, so we have 2 yes and 1 no. So that is the reason why we can justify the claim. But in justify the claim is supported, but just to an acceptable extent. What does this mean for to acceptable extent? What is it? We have learned it already. Yeah, what is it? To an acceptable extent?
That should be a qualifier.
You learned this concept already in the Tuckney model. What concept is it? What concept is it? To an acceptable extent. Because we say yes to the second warrant, we say yes to the second to the final warrant, but we say no for the first warrant. So to an acceptable extent over here is the quantifier that we learned at the beginning. Yeah. Okay. So with this kind of examples over here, I started this one with a claim. Yeah, I started with this kind of validation process with the claim. And in this one, I would like to validate the evaluation inference. How can I do so? The first one, I need to state the claim. And in order to support this claim, I have to find out this kind of evidence over here. And in order to find out this kind of, to link this kind of evidence back to the claim, I have to justify this kind of warrant. Okay, and after that, after developing this kind of argument, I have to go and collect the evidence. And the evidence that I need to collect now is some kind of empirical evidence. I have to use a raw score from the test taker. And after that, I conduct model analysis. And in this kind of model analysis, RAS model analysis, I can find the evidence for the item difficulty. I can find the evidence for the item construct feed, and I can find the evidence for discrimination power of the test and the test item. Okay, so after that, I go from one to another to examine all the evidence. After I examine all the evidence, I have to generate the warrant, or to be more precise, I answer the question in the warrant. Yeah, and by doing so, I say no to the first warrant, I say yes to the next two. And from the number of yes, I know that I have already justified the warrant above, I try to go to justify the claim. With 2 yes and 1 no, I say that the claim is to the large extent or acceptable extent justified, except for the case of the first warrant. Okay, so that is the circle of the argument-based validation. So argument-based validation is gonna be consist of 4 main steps like this one, and this kind of step is gonna be making a circle because you can come back and forth between them every single time. In order to do this kind of validation, we start with some kind of argument. And in other words, we start with the claim. This kind of claims will be related to the inference or some kind of assumption that you need to make. And we learn about different kind of assumption already. In the model, we have 6 assumptions altogether, starting with the first one, that is evaluation assumption, that I just give you the example in the previous slides. After making this kind of argument and claim, we need to collect all relevant evidence. And from this kind of relevant evidence, we have to generate relevant warrant, backings and rebuttals if necessary. And from that, we can justify the claim. So that is a way that we are going to validate a test. Okay, any question for this? Yeah, any question for this? Yes or no? Okay, so now, yeah, if you have no more questions, we have a quick check of something. Now, if I have a claim that my test taker, yeah, the test taker mentally engaged in the test as we expect or have expected. Okay, so I am here making an argument. My argument now is the test taker are mentally engaged in the test as we have expected. What kind of relevant evidence that you might need to have here? Yeah, and how can you collect it? Yeah, so what kind of evidence? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think that we need to collect their opinions from the test taker.
Yeah, okay. So one way is that we use survey study.
Yes, we can use survey study or
Yeah.
interview.
Interview, yeah. Interview is one kind of survey. Survey study are divided into two types. You can use questionnaire or you can use interview. All of them are surveys. Yeah. Okay, so that is the way that we collect the data. Okay, and what kind of warrants that we need to make and how we can justify it.
I think that's we have to prove or we have to identify if what the sharings are true or not.
Very good. How can we do that?
I think maybe based on their performance on the test or maybe the score.
Okay. Another way to double check it is that we can have some kind of camcording evidence. What does this mean for camcording evidence?
Camcording evidence.
Yeah,
can you explain the with camcordings?
Okay, so we can videotaping. We just video recording it. Okay, we can use the video recording evidence as a way to justify the trustworthiness of the responses, whether to see whether they tell the truth or not. Okay, so we can use the videos as a way to triangulate the collected data. And in this one, it's gonna be their responses. Okay, yeah, so that is a warrant. And when both the evidence and the warrant are double checked, and if they say yes, so we can justify the claim. And if most of them say no, we can reject the claim above. Yeah, so that is about the validation. So validation based on the argument approach is that we try to spell out the claims that we want to make. This kind of claim, when combined together, will make your decision more valid, more justifying. And if you want to make the claim, you have to base on the things that we have learned from the previous one, about 6 major claims that we have to do. Yeah, so not only 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, six claims that we have to do. Okay, so each claim will go with different sets of evidence and warrant. For example, in the previous slide, I have already examined the first claim is about evaluation or scoring claim. And in order to justify my scoring claim, I need this kind of evidence. I need this kind of warrant. And I go to collect the evidence by this one over here. And from that, I can justify my warrant. And from justifying this kind of warrant, I, at the same time, can justify the claim. Okay, that is. Okay. I do hope that it's clear to you already. This one is easy. Just a way that you write something, you show your opinion, you persuade other people to believe in your opinion by giving them the relevant example, you justify, you evaluate the quality of this kind of evidence. And when you have enough evidence and your explanation is logical enough, people will be persuaded by your argument. And that is the argument-based validation. And the good thing of this kind of argument by validation is that it gives you the procedure and also the mechanism in which you go and validate your test by making different kind of claims and list out different kind of evidence. And you are free to select the tool and methods in order to collect the evidence. And you are also free to justify this kind of evidence. by using your logical reasoning. Okay, any questions that you may have now? For the lesson today is about the argument-based validation.
I just have a question. So how can we analyze the evidence? You see, you came up with the like the bubble chart.
Okay.
And even some other chart. So how can we do it?
Okay, so you just put the score. As I said from this slide over here. Okay, so you have a spreadsheet like Excel sheet. Okay, you go into the Rasch model analysis, and they ask you to input the raw score of each student for each item. And after that, you hit the submit button, and you can go into different kind of outcomes and select them out. It's just like the Excel, and the Excel, you have different kind of analysis, right? And you put the data in, and the machine and the program will analyze the data for you. And for example, in the outcome box, you can see like item difficulty, you can see like item construct fee, you can see something like discrimination power, and you just go to that and try to bring out the documents that I showed you, yeah, like the chart. Yes, this kind of chart will appear in the outcomes of analysis. Yeah. It's just like some kind of statistic program solely. It's just like Excel is like Rasch model. So Rasch model is going to be another program that is more advanced. Yeah, but your job is just enter some kind of score for your student item by item, and you hit the submit analysis. And after that, you go into the outcome and select the analysis that you want to have. And Rasch models analysis is going to be something that is very powerful tool for you to analyze the data, especially for numeric data. It's not some kind of verbal data. Okay. Other questions? Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so if you have no more questions for the lesson today, yes, see you at 2, I guess. In the afternoon section, I am going to focus on the feedback, feed now, and feed forward, and together with some kind of very large room for you to ask any question related to the final assignment. So the main focus of the afternoon section is on how to carry out the final assignment and how it can be scored. Yeah, and for the other thing like feedback, feed forward, feed now, I can go very quickly because it's something that you have done for several times in your job already. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, teacher.
Okay. Okay, so see you in the afternoon at 2. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
See you.
Yeah. See you.